If you're ever watching this after, you're just gonna have to fast forward, okay? State the value of each trig ratio. So that's what I'm gonna call this question. And so we're gonna have one triangle here on the side, like that. Call it DEF, starting at the top. And we're gonna, so this is A here, this question. So 1A is gonna refer to this triangle here. So I'm gonna ask to come up with cosine of E, tan of E, sine of E. So you're supposed to come up with two numbers that go in each slot. So once you've copied that, let's go over to our triangle and fill it in with numbers. Okay? So you've got 40, 24, and 32 here. Let's do one more, B. And for B, we're going to use this triangle here. Okay, Lucas, I got you, yeah. Okay, thank you, Reggie. So this one, let's call that X, Y, Z. And we'll put numbers 4.5, 6, 7.5. And here I'm going to ask you to come up with sine of Z, cosine of Z, tangent of Z. Okay? Yes, Francis. Did you raise your hand? Just the ratio, yeah. That's a good question for everybody, okay? Sometimes it will just ask you, for the value of each trig ratio. So you just write it like two numbers here, but you could also write it as a decimal if you'd like. Unless I tell you to write it as a decimal, just leave it as a fraction, okay? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause there. Question 2. Solve for the following unknown side or sides. It will depend on the question. A. And here you have to think if you have to use (67 degrees). So that's A, B, yeah, this is 41 degrees here. Okay, so there are your 3 questions. I'll give you some time to solve them and then we'll move on, okay? So question number 3 is going to start at the back for me, but if you have room in the first page, go for it. It's not a big deal. 3. So you start with one right triangle, and then you go to the top of that one and make another right triangle. Bring it down to here. So there's 2 right triangles stacked like that. This is going to be 2.8 meters, 3.2 meters, and this is going to be X, right? This side here. This is going to be 12.7 meters, and this is going to be side Y here. And one more under it, and then I'll give you some time to work on it. So there are the 2 questions. Last question, I think. Ivan is a hydro worker. Ivan is a hydro worker and knows that guy wires supporting hydro poles are usually 3.5 meters long. If the wire is anchored 2.1 meters from the base of the pole, calculate how high up the pole the wire is attached. I would say include a diagram. So this would be a 2-mark question. So make a diagram and try to solve that particular question. So grab a marker or a pen and go check or X, right? I'll tell you what everything is worth. So the first ones here, we would make them worth half a mark each. So I just put down half each. If you get it wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. Obviously, there's nothing in between. So cos of E is right here. And I'm just going to quickly write down this for myself. So Gatoa just at the top to help me. But they're all talking about angle E, so I'm stationed here, so I'm just going to quickly label it. Opposite is always across the angle that you're situated in. And the hypotenuse is always across the 90, so this must be the adjacent side. So you label them. Cosine calls for adjacent and hypotenuse, so it's 32 over 40. So cosine has to have 32 and 40 there for you to get the mark. Tan calls for O and A, so it'd be 24 over 32 in that order. If you didn't do them in the right order, it's wrong. If it's 32 over 24, it's wrong, okay? Sine of E, that would be opposite of our hypotenuse, so it'd be 24 over 40. So half a mark each so far. Let's keep going. It'll be a total of 3 marks for question 1, right? Because half of 6 is 3. Here we're talking angle Z. Just keep in mind that I could switch this on you. I could switch this on you, okay? It could go from X to Z, so you just have to watch out for it. Z is right here. That means that this is opposite right here, across the 90 you have hypotenuse, and this is the adjacent. The adjacent side always touches the angle where you're at. Okay, that's how another way to find the adjacent side. That means that the other one has to be the opposite. And across the 90, that's always the slanted one, that's always the hypotenuse. So sine of Z, so, right, OH. So that means that this is 4.5 and then this is 7.5. Cosine of Z. adjacent over hypotenuse. So that'd be 6 over 7.5. Tangent is O over A, right? TOA. So that'd be 4.5 over 6, like that. And again, these ones could all be written as decimals if you wanted to, but I like to keep them as fractions, okay? So question 1 is worth 3 marks. So add how many halves you got and put a mark out of 3 for question 1. Okay. Next up is question 2. And here, I'm going to make them worth 1 each, I think. Just do 1 each. Okay, so 1 mark for each one of them. I probably, that's 2 each, sorry. We're going to make each worth 2 marks because there's a little bit more than just 1 mark involved. Okay, so here we go. Arabella, did you raise your hand or was it? Oh, okay. Something happened to that. Oh. Can you show question 1 again? Yeah. All right. Perfect. Let's go on to question 2. 2 marks each. Okay, so 1 mark is going to be allocated to finding the right trig ratio that you're supposed to be using. So if you're sitting here, the angle when it's labeled, that's where you want to be sitting. You travel out, this is opposite. That's hypotenuse, but I don't know and don't care about it, right? So I'm going to stick with this one. That must be the adjacent here. So because it's O and A, we have to use tan. So as soon as I see tan, I will give you 1 full mark, okay? Tan of 67, you get 1 mark for just having tan there. If you don't have tan, take off 1 already, okay? Tan of 67 would be opposite over 25. You put the 1 there just so you see that it's a proportion here. So it's essentially multiplying up, dividing down. Right? You always start on the side where your variable is and you start your journey. So x is going to be 25 times tan of 67. And depending on what calculator you have, it will be a different process in terms of typing it in. 21 times tan of 67. And that would be 58.896. So what would that round to? 896. This 6 bumps this to a 10, bumps this to a 9. So it would be 90. All right, and that's in meters. So if you forgot your meters, take off half a mark. Basically, if you can end up at 58.9, you get 2 out of 2. Simple as that. Okay? But you get 1 mark for sure for having tan, and then another mark for doing the right work and getting the right answer. If you picked a different, like let's say you picked sine, you would lose a mark immediately. And then I would have to see if you even, considering that you picked sine, if you did it right as well, right? So I'd give you 1 mark right now if you did some work there. So next up, this is the angle. Across from it is the opposite. This is the hypotenuse. I don't care about this side, so I'm not going to label it. So it's O and H, H and O. Which one has those two? It's so, right? Just to remember there. That's the only one that works. So it's sine of 41. You get 1 mark for using sine. And opposite is 29.7. And hypotenuse is x. And this is where the 1 is important, right? Because you're going to have to multiply it, then divide. So in this case, you divide this number by sine of 41. And remember, sine of 41 is just a number. It's a decimal. So this is how I type it in, 29.7 divided by sine of 41. And that's 45.27, and we are in inches. 2 marks for getting that one. Okay, next. This one right here. Angle is here, we're located there. Across is the opposite. I don't care about that one. This must be the hypotenuse. And this is the adjacent. So A and H, that should remind you, okay, that's A and H is ka, which means you have to use cosine. So 1 mark for cosine. And then you have to put the numbers in the right place. A comes first, which is x. 175 comes over here. Put the 1 just for looks. So it's really just 175 times cosine of 38. That's 137.90. And we're in miles. And if you think about it, it's shorter than the hypotenuse, which is something you always want to check, right? Okay, let's say, for instance, you flip this, right? The 175 was up here. Then you would have to go 175 times 1 divided by cos of 38. You would get 222 and something, which cannot be because this is the longest side, right? So you have to watch out for that. Always question your answer. So 6 for question 2, it's out of 6. So if you use tan for A, sine for B, cosine for C, you get 3 out of 6 already. Okay. So put down a mark out of 6 there. Next page. Okay. This is multi-step, and this is Pythagorean theorem only because there are no angles, right? So we'll first deal with this one because it has 2 sides given. So to find x, I realize that x, looking at this here, is my hypotenuse across the 90, right? So x will be the square root of both legs squared and added. Okay, you have to add them because it's the hypotenuse that you're finding. So you would go square root of, and that's 1808. So x would be 4.25. You get 1 mark for this. You get that right. And then to find y is, considering this triangle here, y is a missing leg, right? So you would go square root of hypotenuse 12.7 squared minus x squared, which you just found is 4.25. And I would suggest you do this in steps. That's 143.2275. Don't round too early. Take the square root of that. That's 11.97. You get another mark for that. If you messed up here, but you are subtracting for y, right, you would still get this mark here. That is, of course, provided that this is all consistent and correct. So A is worth 2 marks. So I'll just scroll down a bit. B, which one should you work with first? You should work with this one because you've got 2 out of the 3 sides on this triangle. X is one of the legs, so X will be square root of the hypotenuse squared minus the other leg squared. That's how it always goes. It's either plus or minus. Think about it, leg should be shorter than the hypotenuse, so minus makes sense. Take the square root of that. That's 481.29. And that's 2194. And we are in yards. If you get this, you get 1 mark. 1 mark for that. Move over to this guy. Y is the hypotenuse on this side. So you're going to have to add these two, square and add. But we always square root. There's no way around it. So 21.94 squared plus 22.7 squared. Do the inside first. You get 996.6536. And that's 31.57 yards. You get another mark for that. So question 2 is also worth 2. Sorry, B. 3B is 2. So 3 has a total of 4 marks attached to it. So last one, that one is worth 2 marks as well. And then we'll tally it all up and see what you've got, okay? So Ivan is a hydro worker. He knows that guy wires supporting hydro poles are usually 3.5 meters long. If the wire is anchored, that means like pinned to the ground, right? 2.1 meters from the base of the pole, calculate how high up the pole the wire is attached. So we talked about hydro poles, right? They hold the wires, right, that go along, and they will often have a guy wire, like a wire going in an angle, supporting it. So it doesn't matter which way it's going, right? If this is the ground, we know that the guy wire doesn't go all the way up ever. It's just somewhere along the side here of the pole. So it will go down like this. And the hydro pole is hopefully at a 90 with the ground. So there's your triangle. We know that the guy wire is normally 3.5 meters long and that it is anchored, right? Anchored means like there's literally a long pin that's underneath the ground that's keeping it there, okay? So we know that the distance from here to here is 2.1. because this is the base of the pole. So it's anchored 2.1 meters from the base of the pole. So they're essentially asking you how high up the pole here is it attached. So X is there. This is one of the legs. So we need to take the hypotenuse, square it, subtract one of the legs and square it. And that's 7.84. So we got 2.8 meters. And so I would give you 1 mark for the correct diagram, 1 mark for the work. So if the diagram is off, you would probably still get 1 mark for the work if that's correct, if it's consistent. Okay? Now let's see where we're at. So question 4 is out of 2 as well. So you've got 2, 4, 6 on the back side. And we've got another 6 for question 2 and 3. So that would be 15 total. So at the top of the AC, add up everything you've got and put down a mark out of 15. And then I will open a slot where you will upload it to.